when we talk about the context of Uganda, we are not saying that FIMI is affecting just Uganda, it's the entire world.
Once you have a phone, once you have a computer now, you basically become a journalist. You can put anything out there.
If there's a car accident, whoever's there first on the phone is the reporter. It's how we know what has happened.
Misinformation is someone doing this unintentionally, like I don't know what was going on.
So it's not only one individual sharing fake news, as we can see on social media.
I believe the advent of globalization granted us a lot of opportunities, and these opportunities extended also in the media markets.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us for this open conversation on foreign information manipulation and interference, hosted by the EU Delegation in Uganda in conjunction with Media Challenge Initiative. And we have an amazing panel joining us for this conversation, experts and researchers in the fields of media and politics and international relations, so that hopefully we can have a well-rounded conversation about this. And before I begin, I would like to welcome our panelists and welcome you, our live studio audience, as well as all of you that will be joining us via recording later on. Now, in a special way, we want to tackle this conversation from the lens of the media, because we can't talk about information without talking about the people that are at the head or at the helm of dissemination of information. So I'll start with you, Mr. Onen, and let's start it off with sort of an example. So speaking of the Anti-Homosexuality Act, now that it was passed, the international backlash was swift. You know, CSOs, foreign governments, everybody came down hard. This is what we are saying. These are, you know, some of the restrictions we are placing on Uganda and so on. And the Ugandan media has this responsibility to provide balanced reporting. And as this is happening in the same place, the Ugandan government is saying this is a patriotic act to protect our values, to protect who we are and where we come from. And the media sits in the middle of that, having to give us a balanced reporting. So how would you say, just how vulnerable is the media in Uganda to this FIMI threat? And if we are indeed in a delicate spot as the media, what kind of strategies should we be employing to level that out?
In my opinion, I feel like especially the debate surrounding the Anti-Homosexuality Act sort of introduced an interesting phenomenon where there are a lot of people here who may not be too happy with the performance of the government and have their own sort of pet peeves with the government. And so when there was an international backlash against the Anti-Homosexuality Act, you saw mixed reactions. Some people felt happy that the government was being punished, though they didn't seem to mind that they were being punished for passing a bill that they themselves also support, right? So there was just a cacophony of different voices and different perspectives and a lot of confusion. And when it comes to certain issues such as homosexuality, obviously Uganda is kind of like where the turf war is being fought by several competing special interest groups. A lot of some would argue that we are importing these debates from other countries where there could be certain advocacy groups, especially more progressive pro-LGBT advocacy groups who would like to see certain advancements in the rights of LGBTs in Uganda. They may lend support to organizations here to advance that cause. Whereas on the other side, there might be some more family-oriented Christian organizations from the States who are also supporting groups here to also advance that cause. So then it's hard to really know whether the conversation surrounding this issue is authentic and organic, or if it's just being fueled by the turf war that is being waged on Ugandan soil between these international interest groups. And whoever it is they may be funding and supporting here. But in as far as how the media reports on the issue, I feel like our media's coverage on the issue has been fairly objective. Our media here doesn't seem specifically biased towards one side or the other, but rather just sort of capturing the broader implication of the sanctions and hearing the different perspectives from the different actors in the debate. But as far as citizens go, the ordinary people who are consuming all of this information, I think it behooves us to pay attention to things that are happening outside and see how some of that might be spilling into our society here, and kind of understand that, look, sometimes a lot of the dialogue you're seeing here may not be naturally arising from specific concerns people have here. Sometimes it's also an issue of creating a red herring and a distraction from broader, more important national issues. Why not discuss corruption? Why not discuss the state of the roads and the hospitals? All of a sudden, if politicians decide they're going to champion a pro or an anti-LGBT stance, all of a sudden, people are less eager to attack them for their failings in governance, because now they are the heroes of traditional values and virtue. So we also have to be very careful about that and not allow ourselves to take our eyes off the ball, which is governance, which in my personal opinion is an even more important issue. Like, if you're really going to try and tackle an issue, that's the primary thing, rather than to allow ourselves to be distracted by some of these culturally sensitive issues which the politicians themselves know will cause us to ignore their failings and pay attention more to that.
All right, so because you've spoken specifically about us, us the people, before we even talk about the leadership, I think that brings up freedom of expression. And even in our current climate, freedom of expression is something we are discussing. Well, I mean, it's always a discussion, but it's something that is being highlighted more and more. Are the regulations that we have in place, are they regulatory or prohibitive?
Now, on the face of it, for those in the media, civil society, human rights defenders, the cynical view, of course, is, well, what else can they say? They're using that as an excuse to clamp down on us, as they did with the Public Order Management Act. They create all these computer misuse laws to really stifle us. But then, and that's why I hesitated just before I began speaking, when you actually get to speak to people in the government who are not being partisan, who are not trying to score a point, who are speaking off the record, then a few unsettling facts start changing your perspective. And I'll be one of those who will be the first to think the government is trying to clamp down on us. I'll just take an example. Just before the 2021 election, you remember those 4 days when the internet was switched off, and then the weekend from the 4th, I think it was a Wednesday evening, the 13th of January, when the entire internet went off. Then on Monday at about 11 a.m., it comes back on, but social media, I think, is still off. Then to this day, Facebook is off. That seemed to be a sign of a panicky government. But then the information I got to hear was that actually there were some foreign actors who were trying to, sow disinformation and, do a few nefarious things that, when I listened to the explanation, it gave some weight to what the government's fears are. So, to answer it briefly, I am sure along the way that would be one of the excuses. Outspoken critics, and then are essentially arrested or threatened on the basis of this. But there does seem to be genuine concern, which, at least for the moment, I can't get into. But there is weight behind the government's concern.
Okay, you bring up something interesting about internal actors as well. I mean, then the question also can become, are we also propagators of FIMI? Perhaps I can pass this on to you, Dr. Kasaija. What are your thoughts on the fact that we even internally might be contributing to this disinformation?
Well, all of us have become journalists, Once you have a phone, once you have a computer now, you basically become a journalist. You can put anything out there, whether verifiable, verified. And this is what frightens me, because I find some of the information is it's unbelievable. But then I meet some colleagues who tell you, have you heard this? Not with any, not prejudice, I'm not prejudiced about with any newspaper in this country. I used to have a colleague who would ask me, have you read Red Pepper? And they'll look at this guy and Red Pepper has said. And they'll look at this man and say, but seriously? You want me to read Red Pepper? And you want me to quote Red Pepper? So for me, it's that capacity to, I think, to verify things. And in this era where everybody's having a phone as become a journalist, it's become so difficult to verify. And because of the way our country is, we don't have that capacity to debunk, fact check. Immediately you ask someone, if someone says something, then you can fact check. We don't have those capacities yet.